Hi, everybody, and welcome to Office Hours. This is episode number 4 on presenting a conference paper. As you know by now, my name is Tristan Cabello. I'm the Associate Director for the Master of Liberal Arts at Johns Hopkins University. And Office Hours is really a series of workshops that we have designed for the Master of Liberal Arts students about the questions that they ask the most often during our office hours, questions about publication, academic conferences, PhD applications, and career-related issues. So in these office hours, we try to answer those questions. You have also a Q&A at the end of this session to ask your question, and you can send me your questions beforehand so I can answer them during the podcast. So one of the questions that I get the most often during office hours is how do you prepare for a conference? And so I have really three pieces of advice for you. You should write your paper fully. Don't think that you can just jot down a few notes and speak with your notes and that you'll be able to sustain, 10 to 15 minutes of a presentation. It is stressful to speak in front of people. It is stressful to present at a conference. And so it is really a safety guard to write your paper fully before you come to the conference and to read your paper. Rehearse your paper. Make sure that you read it several times, that it flows properly, and more importantly, that it fits within the time limit. That's very important. It's usually between 8 to 12 minutes, depending on the numbers of presenters that will be on your panel. And 3, prepare a PowerPoint, especially if you have a lot of visuals, especially if you have a lot of quotes in your paper. It is very important that your audience have access to those quotes and those visuals. But again, presenting your paper is just one side, is just one aspect of going to a conference. Going to a conference is also about networking. And so it's very important that you make a full schedule here of your conference, the panels, the plenary, the publisher booth that you want to attend, or the career workshop that will be available at the conference. Again, it's usually between 2 to 3 days, and so that goes fast. That goes by very fast, and this is for this reason that you have to be organized in order to get full advantage of those conferences. Make sure also that you schedule coffee meetings with researchers in your field, professors that you want to meet, colleagues, your fellow panelists maybe, or former professors that you haven't seen in a long time. And as I was talking about yesterday, it's usually very expensive to go to a conference. And so you want to take full advantage of what the city where the conference is located has to offer. And that's especially true if you are in a research field that involves archival research or interview research. You just want to take advantage of all the resources that will be available to you in the city where your conference is located. Let's get back to presenting your paper. It's usually a very stressful event. And so especially when you start out, when this is your first conference, it might be, you might have, some anxiety building up. A couple of advice here, a few advice that I think have worked for me, that may work for you. When you get accepted to the conference, do not start working on your PowerPoint just yet. Start working on your paper first. Make sure the outline is very logical. Make sure your argument is on point, and then work on your PowerPoint presentation. Make sure, again, that your paper is within the time limit. Usually you have between 8 to 12 minutes to present your paper. So needless to say that the 25, 30 page paper that you write for your capstone is going to be way too long for that presentation. If you present for 10 minutes, I would advise that you keep your paper up to 8, 9 pages because you also want to take time to pronounce your sentences slowly and not run through the paper very quick. The visuals that you use should be used in order to shed light on your content, okay? Not to complicate your content. Make sure, again, that you aim for simplicity. You will be talking to people who are familiar with your field and some who are not. So make sure that your paper is accessible to the widest audience possible. And that's linked to the fourth point here, the fifth point. Be aware of who you are presenting to, right? If you're going to a conference in women's studies, you might want to make sure that you present a more interdisciplinary way of understanding your topic. If you go to a conference in the history of women, for example, you might want to put the emphasis really on history when it comes to the methodology. So make sure that you are aware of who you are presenting to. Prepare your presentation by practicing it. It sounds very straightforward, very simple here, but that's probably the most important thing to do here. By rehearsing, by preparing, you will end up learning some part of your presentation by heart, and that makes it easier to deliver it than in front of an audience. I have lost dozens and dozens of pages because I had not back up my computer. So computer breakdown, they crash, make sure that you back up everything, right? One thing that's very important too is to get to know the venue where you'll be presenting. Most of the time, those conferences happen in hotels, and you will be presenting in ballrooms. Get to know where you are presenting your paper. It's very important. Is it a small room? Is it a large room? Is it equipped with a microphone? If this is a large room without a microphone, be ready to have a strong voice. Make the most, again, of your body language. Do not hide behind the table, behind the lectern. It's very important to be present and to be fully present. So some people like me speak with their hands. Use your hands, use your body to convey your ideas as well. Don't be shy. And finally, it's a very important thing to engage with your audience. So make sure that you are in some type of conversation with them, and that you also welcome questions from them. And so it's very much okay to say at the beginning of the paper, it's okay to interrupt me if you did not understand something. Most of the time, nobody does. Everybody listens, very religiously. After your panel, there will be a Q&A session. And the Q&A session is, it depends, usually 10 to 15 minutes long. There will be 2 to 3 panelists on your panel. And so from time to time, there's not even enough time for the Q&A at the end of the session. So don't be too alarmed if it doesn't happen. Sometimes we actually run out of time. But a couple of things here that I want to share with you so you can be prepared for the Q&A, which also sometimes can be experienced as a very stressful situation because you don't know, you do not know what type of question will be thrown at you. So be ready to answer a few questions. And usually those questions are, they're always the same. If you are at a conference in, let's say, I took the example of the history of women's history before, how does that relate to the larger field? That's usually a question. A lot of people like to ask the question, how does that relate to my field? And they will explain their own field of study. When you answer a question, here also set a time limit for yourself. After the first minute, nobody listens anymore. So you should be ready to answer those questions very straightforwardly and quick, in less than 60 seconds. A good way to start the Q&A, sometimes there's no questions, is to ask a question yourself, usually to your fellow panelists. One question that I often get in office hours is what happens if I don't know the answer to a question that I'm being asked? And here it's completely okay to say, I don't know. Research, as you know, is an ongoing process. You learn something every day. And you might be asked a question that you don't know the answer of. There's no shame here. It's completely okay. It doesn't mean that you are an imposter attending a conference. It just means that you have to do more research, and that's completely okay. And so most of the time, I have to tell you that this is actually something great about conferences, that you are being asked questions that you don't know how to answer. And that complicates then your own argument and your own research. It's important also to include everyone that's in the group on the panel. So when you receive a question, it's okay also to ask somebody else to answer that question and to complement what you have just said. You know, just show that you are interdisciplinary, that you are a good colleague. Also, as you know, in academia, in history, in sociology, and anthropology, people disagree. And that's completely okay to have somebody on the panel or somebody in the audience that says, I disagree with you. Okay. Either you end up agreeing, and that's totally okay. That means also that you are flexible and that you are able to recognize other people's arguments. Either you do not agree, and that's absolutely okay. Recognize that some people may disagree with you, that people have different opinions. Research is, again, never ending. Historical research, sociological research, research in the liberal arts is never ending. And that's completely okay if somebody disagrees with you and if you disagree with somebody, of course. There is always more work to do after the conference. And so after the conference, you should absolutely inquire about proceedings. Proceedings are usually journals or a collection of papers that gets published after the conference. Not all conferences do that. Some do. If there are proceedings being published, you should do everything that you can to get into that publication. Publicize your presentation. Tell people that you have attended the conference. Inquire about awards. I said that yesterday. There are many awards being given at conferences for students, for senior colleagues. You should absolutely inquire about them. And it's really great to show, especially if you are applying for PhDs later on, that you have received an award at a national conference, for example. That's very good news. Make sure that you stay connected with the people that you have worked with during this conference or that you've met. Send, thank you notes if you've met with a senior colleague who has taken the time to have coffee with you, for example. And finally, I always appreciate to hear from you, to hear from your successes. And so if you have if you have been invited to a conference, if you have given a paper at a conference, always talk to your advisor, always talk to the program director, and make sure that they know we want to publicize all the great things that you are doing on social media or on the MLA Blackboard community. That being said, this is everything that I wanted to share with you today. You can absolutely watch this workshop again when it will be posted on YouTube. However, I had a couple of questions that were sent to me before the beginning of the workshop. A question about, is it okay to contact my fellow panelist and the moderator beforehand? Absolutely. Actually, the moderator would probably contact you before the event, just to get your bio and the title of your paper if it's not determined. And so that's very common. And also it's very common to get in touch with your fellow panelists and to keep in touch with your fellow panelists. This is also one of the great, added value of going to a conference, is that you make friends with your fellow panelists, which usually are in the same field as you. And this is how you meet people and you build your network, your scholarly network. A second question that was also being asked here, and that's very important. What if I'm being asked to record my presentation? Because as you know, some of those conferences are online. It's now more rare. Most conferences are now resuming on site. And let's hope that it will last and that we will keep them that way. But if you are being asked to record your paper, that's completely okay. You can absolutely use Zoom or PowerPoint. And it's actually a good thing because you make sure that your paper, that your presentation is within the time frame. Now, most of the time, what those Zoom conferences are also asking you is to attend, of course, the showing of your recording for the Q&A at the end. So most of the time what happens is that the presentation is being recorded and broadcast to the audience, but then the three panelists come at the end of the panel to answer questions live. And so if there are no questions here, I will stop here. However, know that I'm always available to answer questions. If you have any questions on conferences, on PhD applications, on publications, the next episode of Office Hours is going to be in April, and it is going to be on publications. Thank you very much for attending, and I will see you very soon.